Picture this. You are seated in business class on El Al Flight 028, cruising at 30,000 feet between Frankfurt and Tel Aviv. The passenger in seat 7A seems calm, perhaps too calm. He is watching a movie, sipping champagne, completely unaware that sitting 3 rows behind him are 2 CIA operatives who have been hunting him for 18 months. His name is Ehud Tenenbaum, known in the digital underworld as the Analyzer. He is considered one of the most dangerous hackers in the world, responsible for penetrating Pentagon systems and stealing classified military secrets. But here is the twist. He is Israeli, traveling home to a country that does not extradite its citizens. This is the story of how American intelligence pulled off one of the most audacious mid-air captures in espionage history. An operation where one wrong move could trigger an international incident. Welcome to Operation Sky Capture. To understand this story, you need to understand Ehud Tenenbaum. Born in 1979 in Haifa, Israel, Ehud was not your typical teenager. While his classmates worried about exams and dating, he was building one of the most sophisticated hacking networks the world had ever seen. By age 19, Tenenbaum had already earned his nickname, the Analyzer, for his methodical approach to breaking digital security. Unlike other hackers who relied on brute force, Ehud studied systems like a chess grandmaster, finding weaknesses others could not see. In 1998, he made headlines for the first time. Operation Solar Sunrise, a coordinated attack that compromised over 500 military and government computer systems across the United States. The Pentagon went into crisis mode. At the height of tensions with Iraq, military commanders could not tell if they were under attack by Saddam Hussein or a bedroom hacker. It turned out to be the bedroom hacker. Israeli authorities arrested Tenenbaum, but the sentence was laughably light: community service and probation. The Israeli government, proud of their homegrown cyber talent, had no intention of handing him over to the Americans. To them he was a national asset, not a criminal. But Ehud did not learn his lesson. If anything, his brief brush with the law taught him he was untouchable, as long as he stayed in Israel. Fast forward to 2008. Tenenbaum had gone underground, but he had not gone quiet. Operating from various locations in Israel and Eastern Europe, he built what investigators would later call one of the most sophisticated cybercrime organizations in history. His target this time was not just military systems, it was money. Lots of it. Using custom malware and social engineering techniques, Tenenbaum's network penetrated banking systems across 3 continents. They did not just steal account numbers, they manipulated the systems themselves, creating phantom accounts, rerouting wire transfers, covering their digital tracks with the precision of a surgical team. The FBI estimated losses at over $10 million, but that was just what they could trace. The real number was likely triple that amount. But Ehud made a critical mistake. In compromising a Department of Defense contractor's network, he accidentally triggered a classified CIA monitoring system. Suddenly, this was not just about money anymore. Tenenbaum had stolen encrypted communications, personnel files, and worst of all, he had left a backdoor that could potentially be exploited by hostile nations. At CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, a red flag went up. This was no longer a law enforcement matter. This was national security. A task force was assembled: CIA Cyber Operations, FBI Cybercrime Division, and Mossad liaisons. The mission was clear: find Tenenbaum and bring him to justice. But there was one massive problem. Ehud Tenenbaum was an Israeli citizen, living in Israel. And Israeli law strictly prohibited extraditing its own citizens to face foreign prosecution. As long as he stayed on Israeli soil, he was beyond reach. The Israelis offered to prosecute him themselves, but American intelligence knew how that would end. Another slap on the wrist, a few years at most, and he would be back online. That was not good enough. The task force needed a different approach. They needed to catch him outside Israel, in a country willing to cooperate with extradition. They needed him to make a mistake. And so began one of the most patient, methodical surveillance operations in CIA history. For 18 months, the task force watched and waited. They monitored every digital footprint, analyzed every communication, tracked every movement. The NSA deployed its most sophisticated surveillance tools. The CIA embedded assets in hacker communities, hoping someone would slip up and reveal Tenenbaum's location. But Ehud was careful. Paranoid even. He used encrypted communications, changed phones weekly, never stayed in one place too long when he traveled. He knew he was being hunted. The team tried everything. They attempted to lure him to conferences in countries with extradition treaties. They monitored his family and associates. They even floated fake business opportunities, hoping greed would override caution. Nothing worked. Lead investigator Sarah Chin, a veteran CIA cyber operations officer, described the frustration years later in a declassified interview. "We had one of the most dangerous hackers in the world operating with impunity, and we could not touch him. Every time we got close, he would retreat back across the Israeli border like it was home base in a game of tag." But then something changed. Intelligence intercepts revealed that Tenenbaum was planning to attend a high-level cryptocurrency conference in Frankfurt, Germany. Better yet, he had already booked his flights, El Al round trip, Frankfurt to Tel Aviv. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. Germany had an extradition treaty with the United States. But timing would be everything. If they arrested him in Frankfurt, his lawyers could tie up extradition proceedings for years, and the Israeli government would pressure Germany to release him. They needed something cleaner, faster, with no opportunity for escape. That is when someone on the task force had a crazy idea. What if they did not wait for him to land? What if they grabbed him on the plane? It sounds insane because it is. Aircraft are governed by complex international law. When a plane is in flight, it is considered sovereign territory of the country where it is registered. El Al is Israeli. Attempting an arrest on an Israeli aircraft could be considered an act of aggression. But there was a legal loophole. When an aircraft is on the ground in a foreign country, that country's law enforcement has jurisdiction, even on the plane itself. German authorities, working with American intelligence, could theoretically board the aircraft during a stopover and make the arrest. The problem? El Al Flight 028 did not have a stopover. It was a direct flight from Frankfurt to Tel Aviv. Unless something happened to change that. This is where the plan gets truly remarkable. The CIA could not force the plane to land, that would be hijacking. But they could create a situation where the pilot would voluntarily divert the aircraft. The team studied LAL security protocols, flight patterns, and emergency procedures. They analyzed weather patterns, airport capacities, diplomatic relationships. They war-gamed every possible scenario, looking for weaknesses and potential complications. The final plan was elegant in its simplicity. Stage a credible security threat that would force the plane to make an emergency landing in a country with a strong extradition relationship with the United States. Once on the ground, German special police would board the aircraft and take Tenenbaum into custody before he even realized what was happening. But it had to be perfect. If El Al suspected the threat was fabricated, if Tenenbaum caught wind of the plan, if the Israeli government intervened, it would all fall apart. Worse, it could trigger a diplomatic crisis that would damage relationships between allies. The operation required coordination between CIA, FBI, German BKA Federal Police, airport security, and diplomatic channels at the highest levels. It required plausible deniability for everyone involved. And it required something else, the element of complete surprise. 2 CIA operatives were assigned to be on that flight. Michael Brennan, a veteran field officer with 15 years of experience in hostile extractions, and Rachel Goldstein, a former Mossad agent now working with American intelligence who could blend in perfectly on an El Al flight filled with Israeli passengers. Their job was simple in theory, complicated in execution. Stay close to Tenenbaum, monitor his behavior, and be ready to assist German authorities the moment the plane landed. They could not carry weapons. El Al security would detect them immediately. They could not communicate openly using electronic devices. The aircraft's sophisticated security team would notice suspicious patterns. They had to appear as ordinary passengers while preparing for one of the most unusual arrests in intelligence history. The date was set, November 15, 2009. El Al Flight 028, departing Frankfurt at 3:45 p.m. local time. Everything was in place. Diplomatic back channels were prepared with careful messaging. German tactical teams were on standby at Munich International Airport. Legal documents were drafted and signed by judges in both countries. Emergency protocols were established with air traffic control. There was just one thing no one could control: Ehud Tenenbaum himself. Would he show up? Would he sense something was wrong? Would he panic and run at the last second, disappearing back into the digital underground? The team watched the passenger manifest update in real time from the operations center. And there it was, Seat 7A. Ehud Tenenbaum checked in. The trap was set. Frankfurt International Airport, November 15, 2009, 2:30 p.m. Michael Brennan sat in a coffee shop with a clear view of Gate B47, watching passengers queue for boarding. He sipped an espresso, his eyes never leaving the gate area. Rachel Goldstein was already through security, positioned near the gate, reading a Hebrew newspaper like any other Israeli traveler heading home. At 2:47 p.m. they spotted him. Ehud Tenenbaum looked younger than his 30 years, dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket, carrying a small backpack and a laptop bag. He moved with confidence, no apparent nervousness, no sign he suspected anything unusual. He chatted briefly on his phone, laughed at something, then ended the call. He presented his boarding pass, passed through the gate checkpoint and disappeared down the jetway. Brennan sent a coded text message to the operations center, "Package is boarding." In Langley, Virginia, despite the 7-hour time difference, the entire task force was assembled in the operations center. Large screens displayed flight tracking data, live communication channels with German authorities, diplomatic contacts in Berlin and Tel Aviv standing by. Sarah Chin, the lead investigator who had spent 18 months hunting this ghost, watched the flight status update on the main screen, "Boarding in progress." This was it. 18 months of work coming down to the next few hours. On the aircraft, Rachel Goldstein was already seated in 10C, 3 rows behind Tenenbaum's assigned seat. She watched as he settled into 7A, stowed his laptop bag in the overhead compartment with practiced ease, and immediately put on noise-canceling headphones. Within minutes, he appeared to relax completely, scrolling through the in-flight entertainment options. Michael Brennan boarded in the final group, taking his seat in 12F. He had deliberately chosen a seat with a clear line of sight to their target. As he settled in, he made brief eye contact with Rachel. No words. No signals. Just 2 professionals acknowledging they were in position. At 3:41 p.m., the boarding door closed with a heavy metallic thunk. 4 minutes later, the aircraft pushed back from the gate, the tug slowly pulling the massive jet away from the terminal. El Al Flight 028 was wheels up at 3:52 p.m., climbing into gray November skies over Germany. The Boeing 777 banked east, setting course for Tel Aviv. Estimated flight time to Ben Gurion Airport, 4 hours and 20 minutes. The clock was ticking. Inside the CIA Operations Center, the team monitored the aircraft's progress on radar, watching the small digital icon move across the map of Europe. The plan called for the incident to occur 90 minutes into the flight, when the aircraft would be over Austria, close enough to divert to Munich or Vienna, far enough from Tel Aviv that turning back would not make sense. Everything depended on timing and plausibility. Aboard the aircraft, Ehud Tenenbaum seemed completely relaxed. He ordered a scotch when the beverage service came through, watched a Hollywood action movie on the in-flight entertainment system, even dozed off for a while with his head against the window. He had no idea that 2 people on this plane were watching his every move. No idea that on the ground, intelligence agencies from 2 countries were coordinating his capture. No idea that in less than 2 hours, his life was about to change forever. Rachel Goldstein maintained her cover perfectly, just another passenger, reading her book, occasionally glancing out the window at the clouds below. Michael Brennan ordered coffee, made small talk with the flight attendant in broken German, every inch the American tourist heading to Israel for the first time. The flight attendants had been briefed before the flight, though they did not know the full details of the operation. They knew only that there was a sensitive law enforcement matter in progress and to follow their standard security protocols when instructed by the captain. They remained professional, calm, showing no signs of the tension building beneath the surface. At 5:15 p.m., the aircraft crossed into Austrian airspace, flying over the Alps at 37,000 feet. It was time. What happened next remains partially classified in its specifics, but the outline is clear from declassified reports and later testimony. At 5:23 p.m., Captain David Rosen received an encrypted communication through LAL secure channels. The message indicated a credible security threat requiring immediate diversion to the nearest suitable airport. The nature of the threat was deliberately vague: potential tampering with aircraft systems, possible hostile actor on board requiring immediate law enforcement intervention. LL takes security more seriously than perhaps any airline in the world. Their protocols are strict, their training extensive. When a credible threat is communicated through official channels, the captain has full authority to make emergency decisions without seeking approval from ground operations. Captain Rosen, a veteran with 20 years flying for El Al and former Israeli Air Force pilot, did not hesitate. He declared an emergency with air traffic control and began coordinating for immediate diversion to Munich International Airport. Inside the cabin, passengers felt the aircraft bank sharply left. The seatbelt sign illuminated with a chime that cut through the quiet hum of conversation and in-flight entertainment. In the operations center at Langley, Sarah Chin watched the flight path change on the screen, the line deviating from its planned route. "We are committed," she said quietly to her team. There was no turning back now. Ehud Tenenbaum stirred from his light sleep, confused by the sudden change in the aircraft's motion. Then came the announcement in Hebrew and English, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Due to a technical issue, we will be making an unscheduled landing in Munich, Germany. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We apologize for the inconvenience." Technical issue. That is what they always said to avoid panic. Tenenbaum looked around the cabin with growing unease. Other passengers seemed mildly annoyed but unconcerned. This was an inconvenience, nothing more. They would land, fix whatever minor problem existed, and be back in the air within an hour or two. But something felt wrong to Ehud. After years of staying one step ahead of law enforcement, he had developed an instinct for danger. His mind began racing through possibilities. Was this really a technical issue? Or was this something else? He settled back, trying to appear calm, but his heart was beating faster now. Munich was not far. They would probably be back in the air within an hour. Everything was fine. Just a precaution. He had no idea that on the ground in Munich, a specialized unit of German federal police was already assembled at the airport, coordinating with American liaisons, reviewing photographs of their target, preparing for a textbook extraction operation. The landing was smooth, professional. The aircraft touched down on Munich's runway at 5:48 p.m. and taxied to a remote stand, away from the main terminals, standard procedure for emergency diversions requiring inspection. Captain Rosen announced they were waiting for ground engineers to assess the technical issue. Passengers could remain seated with seatbelts unfastened. They would hopefully be airborne again shortly. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. That is when Tenenbaum began to feel it more strongly, that prickling sense that something was deeply wrong. The cabin crew seemed tense, overly professional, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. The wait was too long for a simple technical check. And why had they parked so far from the terminal? He reached for his phone, thinking he should call someone, warn someone, though he was not sure who or why. But before he could unlock the device, there was activity at the forward door. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss. German federal police boarded the aircraft. 6 officers in tactical gear, black uniforms with Polizei patches clearly visible, moving with the precision of a military unit. Passengers gasped, alarmed. A child started crying somewhere in the back of the cabin. An elderly woman clutched her husband's arm. The lead officer spoke in clear English and German, his voice calm but commanding, projecting authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are executing a law enforcement operation. No one is in danger. Please remain in your seats and do not interfere." They moved directly to row 7, ignoring every other passenger. "Ehud Tenenbaum?" the officer said, though it was not really a question. He was looking directly at the man in seat 7A. For a moment, the analyzer looked like he might run, though there was nowhere to go at 37,000 feet on the ground surrounded by police. His eyes darted left and right, calculating odds, looking for an escape that did not exist. Then his shoulders sagged slightly and he nodded once. "You are under arrest on behalf of the United States government for computer fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, and unauthorized access to classified government systems. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As they placed handcuffs on his wrists with a metallic click, Rachel Goldstein in row 10 and Michael Brennan in row 12 maintained their covers perfectly, watching but not interfering, not revealing their involvement. They had done their job. The operation was a complete success. Tenenbaum was escorted off the aircraft, flanked by officers, his head down, the confidence and arrogance completely drained from his posture. As he passed Rachel's row, he looked up briefly, his eyes meeting hers for just a fraction of a second. Did he know? Did he suspect she was part of this? It did not matter anymore. 10 minutes after Tenenbaum was removed from the aircraft, German maintenance crews gave the all-clear signal. The technical issue, whatever it had supposedly been, was mysteriously resolved. El Al Flight 028 pushed back from the remote stand and continued its journey to Tel Aviv. Without Ehud Tenenbaum. The arrest triggered an immediate diplomatic crisis. The Israeli government protested loudly, calling the operation a violation of trust between allies, and demanding Tenenbaum's immediate return to Israel. Israeli media portrayed him as a brilliant young man being railroaded by American overreach, a victim of post-9/11 paranoia about cyber threats. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman publicly stated that Israel was deeply disappointed in the methods used to apprehend one of its citizens. Protests were organized outside the American embassy in Tel Aviv. But the legal framework was ironclad. Tenenbaum had been arrested on German soil, during a legitimate emergency landing, by German authorities acting on a valid international warrant issued through proper Interpol channels. Every step had been carefully choreographed to withstand legal challenges and international scrutiny. His defense team, led by prominent Israeli attorney Amir Lazar, fought extradition for 8 months, arguing everything from procedural irregularities to political persecution. They claimed the emergency landing had been staged, which of course it had been, though proving that in court was another matter entirely. The evidence of fabrication was circumstantial at best. They argued that Tenenbaum was being targeted for activities that Israel itself did not consider serious crimes, that he was a scapegoat for American security failures, that his extradition would set a dangerous precedent for all Israeli citizens traveling abroad. German courts were not sympathetic. The evidence of his crimes was overwhelming: years of digital surveillance, intercepted communications, forensic analysis of his networks, and testimony from co-conspirators who had already taken plea deals in exchange for cooperation. In July 2010, after exhausting all appeals, Ehud Tenenbaum was extradited to the United States. He arrived at a federal courthouse in Manhattan in shackles and an orange jumpsuit, facing a 17-count indictment. The charges included conspiracy to commit computer fraud, aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, and unauthorized access to classified government computer systems. The prosecution had evidence most criminals could only have nightmares about: years of digital surveillance conducted by the NSA, intercepted communications, forensic analysis of his network spanning 3 continents, and testimony from multiple co-conspirators who had already taken plea deals. Tenenbaum's only leverage was cooperation. In exchange for pleading guilty to reduced charges and avoiding a trial that could have resulted in decades in prison, he agreed to provide detailed testimony about international cybercrime networks, explain his techniques to FBI investigators, and assist in ongoing investigations. In February 2011, he was sentenced to 97 months in federal prison, just over 8 years. With time served during the extradition fight and good behavior, he would be eligible for release in approximately 6 years. To some in the intelligence community, it was not enough. They had wanted to make an example of him, to send a message that stealing American secrets had severe consequences no matter where you lived or what passport you carried. To others, the sentence was less important than the precedent. The CIA and FBI had proven they could reach anyone, anywhere, even citizens of friendly nations who thought they were protected by non-extradition laws and geographic distance. The message was sent loud and clear across the digital underground: the long arm of American justice could reach you even at 30,000 feet. The case of Ehud Tenenbaum represents a turning point in how nations handle cybercrime and digital espionage. Before this operation, the conventional wisdom among cybercriminals was that hackers operating from non-extradition countries were essentially untouchable. They could attack American systems, steal data, compromise national security, all from the safety of nations that refused to hand them over for prosecution. Operation Sky Capture shattered that assumption. It demonstrated that with patience, international coordination, and creative thinking, law enforcement could collaborate across borders to capture suspects who thought they were beyond reach. The operation also highlighted the growing importance of cyber capabilities in national security. This was not a traditional spy case with dead drops in parks and secret meetings in safe houses. This was a new kind of warfare, fought in zeros and ones, where a single individual with a laptop and an internet connection could pose as much threat as a military division. Since Tenenbaum's capture, similar operations have been conducted against other high-profile cybercriminals. The playbook established in 2009 has been refined and used multiple times, luring targets to countries with extradition treaties, coordinating international arrests, leveraging diplomatic relationships to overcome legal obstacles. Russian hackers have been arrested in Thailand. Chinese cyber spies have been apprehended in Belgium. North Korean operatives have been captured in third countries. The techniques pioneered in Operation Sky Capture became standard procedure. But the case also raised uncomfortable questions about sovereignty, trust between allies, and international cooperation. Critics argued that staging an emergency to arrest a foreign national set a dangerous precedent. What if other nations used similar tactics against American citizens abroad? What if the methods used to capture criminals were themselves ethically questionable? American officials defended the operation, pointing out that every action was legal under international law. No one had hijacked the plane or forced it to land through illegal means. German authorities had made the arrest on German soil with proper legal authorization. The pilot had made a legitimate decision based on security information he received through official channels. The operation existed in a gray area. Legal, yes, but also deceptive. Necessary, perhaps, but also controversial. Today, Ehud Tenenbaum is a free man, having been released from federal prison in 2017 after serving his sentence. He returned to Israel, where he is reportedly working in cybersecurity, on the right side of the law this time, helping companies protect themselves from the very types of attacks he once pioneered. He rarely speaks publicly about his case, declining most interview requests. But in one brief interview with an Israeli technology magazine, he admitted, "I thought I was untouchable. I thought as long as I stayed in Israel, I was safe from American law enforcement. I learned that nowhere is truly safe when you make enemies of intelligence agencies with global reach." It is a lesson that continues to resonate in the digital age, as cybercrime becomes increasingly internationalized and the boundaries between physical and digital spaces continue to blur. The flight from Frankfurt to Tel Aviv takes 4 hours and 20 minutes under normal circumstances. For Ehud Tenenbaum, that journey changed everything. Operation Sky Capture remains one of the most innovative operations in the history of cyber law enforcement. A case where old-school intelligence tradecraft met new-age digital crime, where patient detective work intersected with cutting-edge technology, where international cooperation overcame seemingly insurmountable legal obstacles. It is a reminder that in our interconnected world, borders are more fluid than we imagine. Technology may have given criminals new tools and new hiding places, but it has also given law enforcement new capabilities, new partnerships, and new strategies for pursuing justice across continents. The CIA agents who spent 18 months hunting one hacker demonstrated something crucial. Patience, precision, and international cooperation can overcome almost any obstacle. Sometimes the most effective operations are not the flashiest ones, but the ones executed with meticulous planning and unwavering determination. As for the broader lesson, in the digital age there is no such thing as a perfect hiding place. Whether you are operating from a bedroom in Tel Aviv, a cafe in Moscow, an apartment in Beijing, or anywhere else on Earth, if you are targeting American interests, you are never as safe as you think. The internet might seem like a lawless frontier, a place where anonymity provides protection and distance provides security. But cases like this prove that even in cyberspace, justice eventually finds a way. The reach of law enforcement is longer than most criminals imagine. Ehud Tenenbaum thought he could fly home to safety, back to the protection of Israeli sovereignty and non-extradition laws. Instead, he flew straight into the hands of those who had been patiently, methodically hunting him for a year and a half. Sometimes, the long arm of the law reaches all the way to 30,000 feet. And sometimes there is no escape, not even in the sky. If you found this story fascinating, there are more incredible true espionage operations waiting to be discovered. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the world of intelligence operations, cyber warfare, and the hidden battles that shape our modern world. Leave a comment below. Do you think Operation Sky Capture was justified, or did it cross ethical boundaries? Should friendly nations conduct operations like this against each other's citizens? I want to hear your thoughts on this complex case. And if you want to explore more stories about the intersection of technology and international espionage, check out the video appearing on your screen right now about how the NSA tracked down the world's most wanted dark web administrator. It is another incredible story of patience, technology, and the long reach of justice. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the digital age, anonymity is an illusion and distance provides no protection. Stay curious, stay informed, and I will see you in the next investigation.